Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman on a Friday at high 2. Zach, how you doing?
Doing great. Excited for the show. Good to see you. Good to see Julia. Good to see everyone in the studio.
Little earthquake day. How'd it go for you?
Earthquake day, huh? Well, I'm here, right?
I mean, how many days do you get an earthquake? Is this not you don't think that you object to this being earthquake day? You think this is Mailata day instead?
Yeah. In my world, yes.
It's all about your world. Your world's so myopic.
Okay, I'm gonna ignore that.
Do you like my? Do you like the apocalyptic
not in
Zach
particular,
Berman
but
tweets?
I can wear it. That's fine.
Why? There's nothing to wear. It's just you're a fan of comedy, I thought.
Yeah, that everything is Eagles related. Yeah. Some are clever. Shout out to Scott O, friend of mine, for joining in there. Yeah. So the earthquake. I was doing my defensive depth chart today, and started to shake, and I thought something was going on with my air conditioning system at home.
I had the same thought. I was also working in the basement, and I thought the HVAC was about to explode or something like that.
And then I realized, oh, this is an earthquake. And I mean, I say this.
So matter of fact.
Well, I say this honestly. I do this mistake sometimes where I start saying something on this show, and I'm like, I probably wish I didn't start saying it.
But you got to finish.
I got to finish. I always said if I could be in any natural disaster type thing and ensure it being safe, I would want an earthquake. Like, I feel like it'd be like fun almost.
You've always said this?
Yeah, I've had this conversation. Like, if you could, when you go to like an amusement park, if you can be in any type of if you can be in a ride that you're ensured safety and it's mimicking a natural disaster or simulating a natural disaster, which one would it be? And like hurricanes, no. Tornadoes, nah. I mean, earthquakes. I thought it's concentrated. You're shaking as long as you know it can be safe. But in any event,
Julia is cackling.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I came here prepared to talk about Jordan Mailata.
Meet your brand new baby brother. This is Zach. This is Zach Berman. If only I could be in one natural disaster, it would be an earthquake. You've always said it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see what you did there. So I was just driving down 95.
Were you not here for the one in 2011?
I was actually covering the opening of MetLife Stadium press conference. Yeah.
One of the great days in our nation's history.
I was the Star Ledger covering the Giants at the time, and I was at MetLife Stadium, and they had a thing about the technology in the stadium, and I was covering that.
Did you feel it there?
I actually don't recall it being I guess the MetLife Stadium was so well
that must be it. Yeah, the classiness.
Yes. Yeah.
Earthquake cannot break class. Break glass, but not class.
Yeah. So, do you recall that earthquake from?
I do. It actually echoed. Anthony Gargano was on the air when it happened today. I was on the air back in 2011. I think I've told this story before on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, where I was hosting our live Eagles show. When all of a sudden the studio started shaking, you could see me shaking on screen, and they had been doing construction, I think, in the floor above, and I thought that there was a construction thing, which then flashed me back to when I was a senior in high school. I was sitting in class, and they were doing construction outside the window, and there was a rumbling that had started, and then all of a sudden, the glass exploded into the classroom and hit me right here.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was a little bit traumatic, and so
that does sound traumatic.
I thought maybe that was happening, but I, ever the professional, closed the show. Said, okay, well, we'll see you tomorrow, I hope, and that was the end of that. But today, Anthony got to be the one on screen.
Yeah, I've seen the clip.
handled it well. Julia was abandoned by everybody else in the room. They all ran out.
I just envision it being like George Costanza in that episode with the fire when he's pushing everyone away, running down.
Yes, that's actually what the teacher in that class did. Actually, he was the
really?
first one out of the room. Shout out to the principal, Dr. Wyman, who made sure that if anyone was going to get out of that room alive, it was going to be him.
Leaders eat last. Come on, you don't like that?
I don't like that either.
Yeah.
I was wearing a Melvin Mora Orioles jersey at the time, got blood all over it. And so in order to make up for me almost losing an eye, the school got me a new Melvin Mora jersey.
Do you still have it?
No. Well, I probably do actually, somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like today, the earthquake, do you ever get the sensation that you want to be able to text your son? Like your 6-year-old son who doesn't like. I want to know if he felt the earthquake.
Yeah, I can't wait to go home and find out. I can't wait to go home and find out. I do wish I can go back 6 minutes right now, and not have shared that earthquake anecdote.
Why? That's not an embarrassing anecdote.
Yeah. Probably would. It's probably not something I would have said. I would have.
Why? It's not like deeply personal. It's not like
more,
you're revealing like a kink.
A kink. So I don't know. I've seen. I have no interest in hurricanes or.
I mean, I actually feel like if you could promise safety for everyone involved, like a tornado would be kind of interesting.
I can see that, but the earthquake is concentrated. It's like it's like doing the Tower of Terror, right? It's over quickly.
Yeah, I like the Tower of Terror.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you feel connected to the natural coil that we all share.
I suppose so. And you were mocking my joke that's Jordan Mailata jumping up and down.
I wasn't mocking it. I just
celebrating his. I was trying to show a little personality. I don't want to be a bore on the show. So
well, that was Twitter, not.
Yeah, I don't want to be a bore on social media. So I'm trying to exhibit a little personality. Good. Thank you.
That's not poking fun. I was trying to take the ball and run with it.
Take the ball and run with it. Okay. Yeah. But
you don't like Brian Bremen, the Blood Lord?
They were coming in as I was driving, and I didn't want to look at my phone. Shout out to Shield for that. So.
Okay. All right. So the reason we have a show at 2:00 today is because you spent the last couple hours waiting and then eventually talking to Jordan Mailata, who after the show yesterday was signed to an extension with the Eagles. Give us the details. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so Jordan Mailata, who we mentioned on a show earlier this week that he could be a potential extension candidate.
Yeah, you called that.
But this is a little soon. He had 2 years left on his deal.
Did Jordan look at you and say, "Hey, by the way, I was listening to the show earlier this week, and you had a good idea, so I had my agent reach out"?
No, Jordan was on his honeymoon in Italy when he got the text that the Eagles were interested in doing him. It's like, okay, yeah. He was enjoying Italy. He was there for 2.5 weeks. He was at the dinner table with his wife. They were doing a delayed honeymoon because they got married last year, during the summer, and football season was around the corner, so they wanted to go on like an extended honeymoon. So they were in Italy for their honeymoon, and
the incredible restraint that I am showing in not connecting when you said they were on their honeymoon and the Eagles called about wanting to do it. And for me to not connect the dots of doing it in the honeymoon, I thought was really professional of me.
I can always count you on sophomore humor. It's not professional when you bring it up like this, right? It's.
Well, yeah, that's why I was smiling.
Yeah. So he was actually out.
No, he actually went all the way to say that he was in Italy and not just Europe.
He said Italy. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
But actually, Landon Dickerson already mentioned that he was in Italy. So
the cat was out of the bag.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But he said he got the text about Saquon Barkley at dinner, and he swore because he was so excited. He said, "How does Howie do it?"
He's got to work on his swearing.
Yeah, he said he swore in Italian, but his mom won't believe him when he says that. But anyways, the deal it's worth $66 million. It's a 3-year extension, so adds 3 years onto the deal that he has now.
So how does that explain how that works? Because his deal was signed through the 2025 season.
Yes. So 3 years are added to the deal that he has now. The new money is worth $66 million with $48 million guaranteed. The signing bonus is 22 or thereabouts. He gets the signing bonus right away, right? And then we'll see kind of how this is structured. But basically, this is money added on to the 2 years on his deal. So we kind of present it as, or I shouldn't say we, it's presented in the media as like a 3-year, $66 million deal, $22 million per year, which puts him in the top 5 among offensive tackles. But from the Eagles bookkeeping, they look at it like almost like a 5-year deal, right? It's added on to the 2 years that he has. So you kind of spread that over the 5 years that he has now.
But I also imagine that, years 4 and 5 are easy to get out of.
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious to see. The timing, this benefits the Eagles, frankly, more than Mailata, I think. Now, I would never
seem like it's not like a crazy. 22 a year for a top 5 tackle. It's not something that's going to last very long.
That's what, right? That's what I'm saying. And I have thoughts up on allphly.com. Like, you look at Sewell is up in Detroit, or he has a 5th-year option, but he's eligible for a new deal. Tristan Wirfs is eligible for a new deal in Tampa Bay. Rashawn Slater soon, right? There's some good tackles that are going to be resetting this market, if you will. So it behooves the Eagles to act quickly.
Very good comment from Khalif in the chat.
What's that?
Go ahead.
What was the comment?
Well, it's a whole thing. Do you want me to read it?
Please. Yes. Want to be interactive?
Well, no. I think you need to continue because he's taking and running with the doing it on the honeymoon.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So basically, it behooves the Eagles to try to get this done now. And for Jordan, he said, I asked him about the timing. He said it was something they came to him with. They met in the middle. He let his agent handle it. Now it's hard to turn down that amount of money, right? This is his 3rd contract now, 2nd contract extension. And as I wrote, like, don't put it past Mailata to sign a 4th contract with the Eagles, right? Because he's still in that age range where you would think that he has a 4th deal in him. But for the Eagles, this locks up their starting left tackle, and it locks up their starting left side. Like, him and Landon Dickerson are now both signed through the 2028 season, and it gives the Eagles the homegrown core player that they like at left tackle. And it is for 3 decades now. This wasn't by design. It was supposed to be Andre Dillard, right? But they've gone from Trey Thomas to Jason Peters to Jordan Mailata, and all of them will have, as long as Jordan Mailata stays healthy, a decade plus in that role. That's like, if you talk about how the Eagles have had sustained success over this period of time, or relative sustained success, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's like, literally like the Eagles' philosophy is, as long as you're a starting offensive lineman, you're a starting offensive lineman until you retire. Pretty much.
Well, not totally.
Like Brandon Brooks, Jason Peters probably should have retired.
That's what I'm saying.
But
and Trey Thomas too. They were probably like,
Well, yeah, but it's ready. That's basically it.
Yeah.
I always think back to, there was the training camp competition between him and Dillard the following year in 21, and the way that Jason Kelce talked about it then was like, he said it very plainly. Like, this is a camp competition that's going to change somebody's life. This is a life-changing amount of money. And that was not a close competition. Like, Jordan Mailata was absolutely the better player from the very beginning. And, Dillard also got hurt that summer, but look at what has happened since. Like, he gets an early extension, and then now he gets this amount of money. And he said it today, like, how wild of a life that he has had. He tries to be appreciative of that. It's a crazy story. It's a great story. Yeah,
well said. Because as he said, 7 years ago, he couldn't afford a train ticket. Right, he could barely afford a train ticket. So I always remind myself when we talk about, you could have waited 2 years and seen what the open market hits. You have a $66 million offer in front of you. You have a $20+ million signing bonus in front of you.
Who wants to move?
It's like sometimes that type of security, that type of assurance, it's good for the player, and that's not to get into.
And this one is also definitely good for the team.
Exactly.
They're not really changing what he's making very much. They're giving him money up front, and if he continues to be a good player, they're going to have a team friendly deal.
Yeah, exactly. But I hear from some people who are critical of contracts sometimes, being like, why doesn't the player just wait for free agency? And the reason is because a lot could happen over 2 years, right? If you're Jordan Mailata and you say, all right, I'm happy with $66 million over 3 years added to my deal. I'm happy with the $48 million guaranteed. I'm happy with the $20+ million signing bonus. Like this works. This is good. Don't mess with what works. And so that's the upside there. I guess when you look at Jordan Mailata, do you view him as a top 5, top 8 tackle in this league?
I mean, I would be lying if I had a strong opinion about every single tackle in the league. I think he plays at the level of a guy who is, in my mind, like between 5 and 10. Mm-hmm. I think that he had this unbelievable level of improvement every year, and that has sort of stagnated just a little bit. Like, I don't think from 2022 to 2023 he took a big jump, but he's still really good. I mean, he's such a monster over there, and he's so athletic. Obviously, the combination with him and Landon Dickerson is something that they want to continue. Although I do still think that there is a possibility of maybe flipping him to the right side at some point down the line. I think he's absolutely a very good player. He is worth the money that he is being paid, if not more. Yeah,
something I asked him today, and I was thinking about this last night when I was thinking about the contract, was so much attention, rightfully so, goes to year 1 to year 3, right? Like, he literally didn't know how to play football. He gets here, and he gets developed into a starting left tackle. But as you pointed out at the time, when the Eagles gave him that deal, it was before he had become like the full-time left tackle, right? It was actually on our flight down to Atlanta for the week 1 game against the Falcons. He had become the starting left tackle. Like, he was the injured replacement the year before in 2020. 2021, he wins that competition decidedly against Dillard. The Eagles don't even, he's entering the 4th year of his contract. The Eagles don't even let him start a game yet, right? They signed him to that deal. And we remarked at the time that, like, if he's good, this is like a below market deal. But it was, he had never started a full season. And so anyway, I bring that up as a way of saying, I think like the year 4 to year 6 development sometimes gets overshadowed because when he got into the lineup, he was good, but you didn't know he was going to be this. Like, he still had to prove that he was going to be this, because
I sort of think he showed it that first year in 2020. I mean, we had these conversations back in the summer leading into that training camp. Yeah. Like, I thought he was very good in 2020 and way ahead of schedule. He gets thrown in that week 1 at right tackle and holds his own when everybody thought that was going to sort of be a disaster. And then he gets more playing time on the left side as that season goes on and more than holds his own. I think...
the week 1, Driscoll started at right tackle.
Oh, he was at left tackle?
No, Mailata's first game was his first start was the San Francisco game that year. Do you remember? Peters got hurt. He started in San Francisco, and he played real well.
No, he came in during the game in week 1. Somebody else got hurt in the middle of the game.
Gotcha.
He came in, and we thought that was going to be a disaster.
Okay, yeah.
And then he played. Yeah, anyway. I thought it was clear that year that he was good and better than Dillard, and we were arguing about, like, well, Dillard was a first-round pick. They're going to want to give him the job, but, like, they're not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. And he was he was younger, he was better, he was a more talented prospect. I thought clear from then that he was going to be a very good player, and he has held up to that.
Yes, I put this out on Twitter last night, and someone actually said this would make for like a good series of shows, Eagles What Ifs. And I always think with Jordan, like, if Andre Dillard didn't tear his biceps in 2020, so not the year they had the competition, but they cleared the deck for Andre Dillard to be the starter. Like, Jason Peters came back to be the guard. Right?
And he had to march into Doug's office and demand a raise.
And that year, by the way, it's not like Jordan. I mean, Jordan was somewhat inconsistent. Like, I remember the last training camp practice that year, Joe Osman beats him on the last play.
He had his number,
Like, throws his helmet at the ground, right? But anyways, Dillard gets hurt. And the Eagles first try Matt Pryor, and then they try Jason Peters. It wasn't like, all right, we're going to turn to Jordan Mailata. So anyways, if Dillard doesn't get hurt that year, do you think at some point it becomes obvious Dillard's not the guy? Or at some point, like, Jordan Mailata's on the scout team, and this guy's too talented to not put in there? Or do you think they were just so committed that they would be so committed to trying to see the Dillard experiment work?
Yeah, it's a good what if. I mean, I think that if Dillard had been able to stay healthy, he wouldn't have been playing at as high a level as Mailata was, but I think he probably holds on to the job for a little bit, for sure. And who knows if Mailata gets the same development if he doesn't have the on-field development time. But I do think that eventually it would have worked out that they realized that this guy was much better.
Yeah.
I think it would have just taken longer.
Sure. Now he was entering year 3, but I've said this on the show, and I don't want this misconstrued. Okay, Jeff Stoutland deserves a lot of credit. I mean, and Jordan said that today. Like Jordan said, Stoutland's the big reason, right? The Eagles deserve credit for having, for making the investment, for having the infrastructure, for holding on to them his first 2 years when Jordan didn't really. He wasn't ready to play at that point. Stoutland developed him, but the person who deserves the most credit in all of this is Jordan Mailata, because he put in the work, he learned, he endured. He likes to say his life's like a movie, and sometimes it can almost seem like it's the montage in a sports movie where everything kind of happens so quickly. But this all happened in real time over 3 years, and he put in a lot of work to learn it. He put in a lot of work to get to where he is. And
not for nothing, away, a half a world away from his family and everybody he knows, all on his own.
That's so young, 20, 21 years old. He deserves, you feel good for him as a person because he's earned everything he has.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is, I think that's one of your better takes.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
I want to hear my worst takes.
Well,
that'll be a summer show.
The people continue to chime in on the stairs. And,
the stairs. Okay.
And so
all right.
That would probably be among them. All right. Before we keep going, let me tell you about TruMark Financial Credit Union. Zach's friends, my friends, some of them have recently joined TruMark Financial Credit Union right here in Philly, and it has been an eye-opening experience for them to see the difference between banking at a bank and becoming a member of a credit union. Because when you join a credit union like TruMark Financial, you become part owner, which means profits come back to you instead of going to shareholders. TruMark Financial has better rates, lower fees, and a better return on savings, plus more flexible options overall, and of course, all the same digital tools and technology we all want. But the best part is that TruMark Financial is local. Zach loves a local. They're from right over there, I think.
Fort Washington? Yeah.
They're headquartered in Fort Washington, and with 24 branches across the Philly area, they are deeply rooted in our community. They serve our community and only our community, so their investments and programs help our people right here at home. Becoming a member of a credit union has so many benefits over being a customer at a bank. It's a total no-brainer. So head over to TruMark, that's TruMark.com/PHLY to learn more or to find a branch near you. That's TruMark.com/PHLY, federally insured by the NCUA.
When an earthquake strikes, what's important? A good floor below you. And the place to turn for that is Empire Today. With Empire Today, you get to shop at home convenience, the right products for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. It's the place to get new flooring. So, of course, they have copycats, but those copycats can't beat Empire Today on quality or service or speed. They make shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is that you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of different choices and substitutes. And what they leave out is as important as what they leave in. There's a virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. And it's easy just to snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. And they pride themselves on convenient shop-at-home service. They help the customers shop for floors where so you can see exactly what the new floors will look like with the lighting and the decor to make an informed decision. And they service their own warranties, which I love, because if an issue does arise, and you're not expecting it, but if it does arise, you're not trying to track down a manufacturer's phone number. They service all their warranties themselves. Schedule a free in-home estimate. All listeners can, schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply, but see empiretoday.com/PHLY for details.
I got a big picture Mailata question for you.
as opposed to the little ones. It's a Mailata joke. 6'8", 346. It's actually like 370 now or thereabouts. But yeah.
Okay. His story is a unicorn, right? Like it's hard to believe that you could do that again. But do you think that the NFL as a whole should be doing more of this type of, investment in just athletes as opposed to just finding football players from college football?
Yeah, I like this question. So I did a story a few years ago on Daniel Fa'alele.
Your boy.
He's also from Australia. 6'9", 400 pounds thereabouts. He went to Minnesota, and similar type of story. Like he was playing basketball, and he was in Australia and was spotted as a potential offensive tackle. Now I say this as I recognize. I'm not naive. I recognize there aren't just like Jordan Mailatas walking all over the world. There aren't Daniel Fa'alele's walking all over the world. Just like there aren't Joel Embiid's walking all around the world. But there are more.
There might be some of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying there are more than what the NFL concentrates on. And Jeffrey Lurie, when he was speaking about the Eagles playing in Brazil, one thing that he said is that like the NFL is the biggest league in like the biggest international export that America has, something like that. But he said actually the NFL hasn't done a good job like capitalizing globally. And I'm paraphrasing here. I don't want to misconstrue what he said, but he said
that was his general point. He said, in other words, football is more popular globally than what the global population is bringing talent-wise to the NFL.
Yeah. So I think that as football spreads, right, and the NFL is doing they're trying to do this, and it's easier now to watch things than ever before. It would behoove colleges, it would behoove high schools to look around. The NFL has this international pathway program, but size is so important when you play football, right? Like I'm not telling any secrets here. Is that if you can find someone who is 6'7", 330, you can find a good coach who can help mold him, who can help teach him.
Oh, so now all of a sudden the coaching is easy. I guess that is your point. Yeah.
I didn't say it's easy. I'm suggesting that now. I'm not saying there's Jordan Mailatas on every street corner in Sydney, but there has to be more out there than what the NFL has exhausted during these past 4 or 5 decades.
Peck and I migrate the words behoove, behave, and beehive.
Well, I'm migrating beehive, right? Yeah, it's a beehive. I don't want anything to do with a beehive, right? That's okay. What was that movie when we were growing up? My Girl? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, good for you with the cultural reference.
Joyous.
She's crying.
I just remember being so spooked out about beehives after that scene at the end.
I'm a little bit nervous. Because Casey, as we have talked about, big dinosaur head, knows more about dinosaurs than I know about anything.
That's not. You know a lot about a lot.
That's how much he knows about dinosaurs.
Okay.
I think we're gonna let him watch Jurassic Park.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which I'm excited about, but I'm a little worried. Like, are there gonna be some traumatic parts? Is it a little bit too crossing the line for a 6-year-old? I don't know.
Nah, you got to rip the Band-Aid off at some point, right? That's how I see it. Like, yeah.
You let your kids watch anything?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. They're not asking to watch like. I don't know, but. I'm trying to think. Yeah. But yeah, I would let my kids watch Jurassic Park. I would watch Jurassic Park, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's fun.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. That's a cool thing to experience. That's
probably what we're going to do tonight.
It's a cool thing to experience together. I'm curious how it goes. I'll ask you on Monday.
Okay.
So I nested, or I would nest behoove. And then what's the other one?
Behave.
Pecking behave. Well,
you know what? Powers, behave.
You know what? I'll nest behave. You want to behave quite often. I will peck behoove because sometimes it behooves you to do something. Sometimes it doesn't behoove you to do something.
Oh, there you go.
So
yeah, maybe it behooves someone else. Yeah.
In my show prep, I was not thinking about these 3 words.
Okay.
I have a few questions for you with this.
Please, fire away.
It's football related.
I mean, it's a little boring for Friday, but yeah, okay.
All right.
We got Baldy coming up, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we teased that in the beginning.
Yeah,
We were talking. Brian Baldinger coming up in about 10 minutes. We're going to talk both the Mailata, the state of the offensive line, some options at 22, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so
his thoughts on the Eagles' moves this offseason.
So the Eagles have clearly not just been aggressive in adding talent this offseason, but they've been aggressive in, re-signing some of these. They re-signed all their specialists, right? Brady Mann was a free agent, but they gave Jake Elliott an extension. They gave Rick Lovato. Well, I'm sorry, Rick Lovato was a free agent as well. But they gave Jake Elliott an extension. They give Landon Dickerson an extension. Now they give Jordan Mailata an extension. And a question that I kept hearing from fans yesterday was, is DeVonta Smith next? And the Smith, I've been saying all along, the Smith situation's a little different than like Landon Dickerson because you have the fifth-year option, so he's under team control for 2 years. But Jordan Mailata was under team control for 2 years, and the Eagles were aggressive getting this done. Do you think this is? Well, I will give my opinion after you give yours. But what's your read on the DeVonta Smith situation?
This is complete opinion, unreported, just conjecture. But I think contra Jordan Mailata, DeVonta Smith is more willing to wait it out. Now, I think the Eagles would love to get something done with DeVonta Smith as soon as they can.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think DeVonta Smith wants to be paid what he would expect to be paid on the open market. I don't think that he is worried about. And I mean, you've seen the wide receiver market, right?
Yes.
Like DeVonta Smith is much better than Calvin Ridley. And even if DeVonta Smith got hurt next year and went to the market a year later, he would get paid much more than Calvin Ridley got paid, right? And so I think that this is more like the Eagles are going to... DeVonta Smith's not taking a discount. They're going to have to meet his price. That's my guess.
Sure.
What about you?
Well, that's a good point because the argument that you hear for, players who get paid on the open market, like they hit the open market. That's the benefit of becoming a free agent. If you sign 2 years early, you are taking away the injury risk. You're taking away, you're paying them now as opposed to waiting 2 years, right? So teams kind of think, all right, there should be a discount baked in. Almost like what you're arguing with Jordan Mailata. Now, that's not to say Jordan Mailata signed a discounted deal, but Jordan Mailata didn't sign the deal that he would get on the open market 2 years from now. He signed what it would be right now. So if you're talking about DeVonta Smith, right, there's a few factors here. First off, Jamar Chase is going to get a new deal. Justin Jefferson is going to get a new deal. Like, we can keep on going down the list. There's a lot of Jalen Waddle was in that draft class. There's a lot of really good wide receivers here. You've seen what the market is for players who are inferior to the players I just mentioned. That's going to keep going up. Like Justin Jefferson might be like a $30 million a year contract, right? So it's, as we talked about with Jalen Hurts last year, is that you want to get the Jalen Hurts deal done because he's the highest paid receiver for he's the highest paid quarterback for like a minute, and then someone else does it. So I agree with you. I think this is in DeVonta's camp or in DeVonta's hands, if you will. Like, I think the Eagles would sign DeVonta now if they could.
Right. You have covered Howie Roseman for over a decade.
Yep.
Every single thing he has ever done would tell us that he wants to sign DeVonta Smith as soon as possible. This is a guy who he wants to be around for a long time. It's a position he cares about. He wants to get ahead of the market. If I would imagine that there is an offer on the table and DeVonta Smith is not willing to sign it yet.
Yeah, because the downside for DeVonta in waiting, there's really two things. One, he could get hurt, and two, he doesn't get that money now, right? If he doesn't need, or I shouldn't say need, that's a poor way of framing it.
No, but that's
if it's
a good
not,
point,
if he's willing to wait on getting the money and he's willing to gamble on the injury risk, then it always benefits the player to let those other guys get paid first or to get closer. The closer you are to free agency, the more valuable you are in terms of a contract. But there's also risk involved. So yeah, my instinct is that the Eagles want to do this, but that DeVonta is willing to wait this market out. But I got to think, look, the Eagles are going to exercise the fifth-year option. It's not as if they're not going to.
They do have they have that as leverage. That is a thing that is a reason why they would not go all the way to meeting whatever DeVonta's number is.
But like, it wouldn't surprise me if they're aggressive trying to get this done. And then the only other factor in there that we talked about, and I don't think this is something they need to worry about now, it's something you worry about at some point, is like A.J. Brown he's one of the highest paid receivers in the league. He's one of the best receivers in the league. And I bring this up, AJ, if you're watching, I'm not pitting DeVonta against you, okay? I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is that you see these articles out of Cincinnati, and one of the things that they're saying is that, and look, the Bengals are a different organization than the Eagles. I get it. But that it's hard to pay 2 receivers top of the league money. It's not impossible, right? But it can be difficult for that to happen. Because I would expect DeVonta's deal to be top of the league money, not like in the 10 to 15 range, in like the top 10 range. And AJ's already making 25 a year. So if you're thinking about that, I'm curious about that dynamic. Not to say that like AJ would want more or that DeVonta would want more than AJ. It's just you budget a certain amount of resources to a position, and that's a lot of money allocated to wide receiver.
Yeah, I think I think the team is also probably less worried about being able to pay both guys. You pay the guys who are worth getting paid, and you figure out the rest.
Okay.
I think there are, like, in terms of the personality dynamics, it's not, again, pitting them against each other. But if you are in a situation where one guy has just been paid and another guy is looking to be paid, then all of a sudden the target disparity becomes a bit of a deal because one guy's got to get his numbers.
Sure.
Right? He's chasing something. And so if DeVonta and AJ Smith are both going into next season on their current contracts, they're sort of on equal footing, right? Even though AJ's getting paid more, they're both looking for their next deal. If you pay DeVonta and you haven't paid AJ, then all of a sudden AJ's the one on the clock, or vice versa, right? And so that is a dynamic that might be something that they're thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I thought I had one more thing on the wide receivers, but I forgot what it was. Anything else on your football list of topics?
Well, I'm excited for these next few weeks of draft talk.
We're gonna get to the draft. We're gonna get to the draft, guys. We're gonna get. We got months. We're gonna get there.
So just
we spent yesterday plotting out some position by position episodes.
Some
I think
good guests.
We're gonna have a little Duffman, a little showing some thigh on Monday. Hopefully, talking.
It's gonna be warm out
line.
Monday. Yeah. Just kind of cleaning up from the press conference today. There was a funny moment. I don't know if you caught it.
I did. It was okay.
Okay. I mean, so a reporter asks about the Saquon deal, and he says, "Where were we, babe?" And the reporter didn't realize that Mailata's wife was in the room.
But he had already, in the press conference, referenced that she was there.
That's what I was kind of curious. I turned around. I was like, he's not calling you, babe.
Who was it?
It was Brookie. It was Brookie.
Okay.
I don't know if Brookie heard the babe part, but yeah. So anyways, so there was that. Landon Dickerson, he said that the Landon that we saw at the press conference is exactly how Landon is. He talks to him every day. That's exciting for him. The idea of like being what Lane Johnson and Jason Kelce was in Philly is certainly it's appealing for him. It's something that he aspires for. He said that this trip to Italy was the first time that he really kind of allowed himself to reflect on the journey that he's had. And it's amazing to think how far he's come, as you wrote a great story about a few years ago, and as we've discussed a number of times. So those were a few of the things that stuck out. I think he's excited for WrestleMania this weekend. Are you you strike me as a wrestling guy?
I have been a big wrestling guy over the years. I have fallen off a little bit. I will not be going to WrestleMania this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but I was watching Anthony's show today and saw some WrestleMania thing. I saw a good story about Matt Breen today on The Rock and his high school football coach.
Matt Breen's been pumping out wrestling content this week.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge wrestling guy, but yeah, I think some of the Eagles are excited for WrestleMania this weekend.
Yeah, I bet we're going to see some cameos. I would imagine so.
I would imagine so.
Okay. All right. If there's a line on whether you can bet on, Lane Johnson or Jason Kelce being on WrestleMania, it might be available on BetParks. And that's where it's time for me to tell you about BetParks. PetParks. My pet barks. Does yours?
I don't know. Loopy today.
BetParks. You know the BetParks app. Get in the zone with the BetParks Sports Book app. The money is in the moments. Tonight, you got the Amuse-Bouche at 7:00. South Carolina looking to keep their undefeated streak going up against NC State. But then you got the main event at 9:00, probably a little bit later. Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers. Here we go. Can't wait. We're going to finish Jurassic Park, and then we're going to turn on Caitlin Clark, and it'll be more fun If you have a little hooch in the game, that's what you can do with BetParks. Win big with all-day action and win your first $10 bet and earn $125 in sports bonus bets. You play for fun, you love to win, you bet. Download the app and play along with us. Must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And let me tell you about Miller Lite, because you're watching the women's Final Four, you're watching the men's Final Four, or you're watching the Phillies, or you're watching WrestleMania, and you're hanging out. I don't want to say with the boys. You're hanging out with your friends. It could be women. It could be men. It could be whatever. A lot's changed over the years. One thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. It was the original light beer, and to this day, it's still the best one. Miller Lite has more of the taste you want and less of the stuff you don't. And it's the moments that matter in life when you want a Miller Lite there, because there's those times you remember and you have conversations, you're bonding with friends. You spend less time thinking about what you're drinking and more time drinking with friends, and that's what Miller Lite gives you. Quality and substance over fake and flashy. It's the great taste. It's the clean finish. It's the simple ingredients, because Miller Lite keeps it simple. Undebatable quality, great taste, only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. The light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. Times change. We all know that. But you can always enjoy the great taste of Miller Lite. Tastes like Miller Lite, or tastes like Miller Time, rather. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories per 12 ounces.
All right. Well, that's going to sort of do it for the Zach and Bo part of this episode. We're going to bring in Brian Baldinger now and close out the show that way. Lots of good talk with Baldy on the state of the offensive line, what might be coming in the draft, maybe some insight on Lane Johnson's future, what he thinks about Saquon Barkley, what he thinks about Bryce Huff, all that good stuff. So right now, Brian Baldinger of NFL Network joins us. We will talk to you on Monday. Thanks, everybody. All right, we are back on the PHLY Eagles podcast, and we've got our man. Good to see you, Baldy. How you doing?
Well, I'm good. I'm good. You know, we're I'm like everybody else in our little bubble world of ours. I'm just doing my work, getting ready for the draft, which seems like it's bigger than any other holiday in this whole country right now. So I'm busy preparing, but I'm rested. I'm charged, and I'm like trying to learn new things about a bunch of new players that are coming to the league.
That is sort of my favorite part of the draft process, is like the cramming for a test of it all, which is like the way that I approach many things. But yeah, like there's it's 3 weeks left. I want to learn about as many people as I can. But I want to start because I just have a sense that this was probably not your first earthquake.
So it's funny. I was in a production meeting getting ready for this Path to the Draft show that we have today. And we're going through it, and I'm the walls are shaking. I'm at NFL Films, and I hear and feel the walls shaking, and I'm like, this is an earthquake. And I have been in them. I was in one time at NovaCare. I was talking to Juan Castillo. You might have been there, Bo.
I was there. I was on camera at the time. I had to close the show.
So, do you remember that day? Like I can't remember if that was the spring, if that was OTAs. Like I know, like I remember talking to Juan what was going on.
And I thought, and they were doing some kind of construction in the room above the studio, and I thought that that's what was happening, was that the construction was about to collapse.
Yeah, and I saw this. They had this huge, I don't know what they were doing. Like, and maybe it was one of those camera video things that just, that just, I don't know. I just saw the wheels on it shaking, and Juan was looking at me, and I was looking at Juan. I'm like, yep, it's an earthquake, Juan. I don't know how many years ago that was, Bo, but that was the last one I was in.
I think it was 2011. I think that's right. Yeah. All right, let's talk a little offensive line before we get to the draft, as the Eagles have signed Jordan Mailata to an extension. Give us your sense of like where you think Jordan ranks among like the tackles in the league.
Well, I mean, you can analyze this in a vacuum and just look at tackles, but I kind of look at what they did with Landon Dickerson and extending him, and knowing how these two guys have really kind of grown together over the last 2 years. and how well they play together, and just what kind of friend they'll be friends for the next 50 years. But I feel like that left side is as powerful as any left side in football. Jordan he's an elite player. That's why they extended him for the second time. It's very hard to get around him. You can't go through him. And if they would have leaned on the run game more in the second half of the season, we might not have seen the collapse that we all watched in the last 7-8 weeks of the season. He's a very good player. He got his stance, from Lane. Really studied him. He's got that flying kick stance, getting out of his stance. He's very, very good at that. When he gets off to a good start, he rarely ever gets beat.
There are so many interesting variables about what the offensive line is going to look like next year for the Eagles and really even moving forward. And so I want to get to all of those a little bit. But I think one of the things that's interesting about Jordan is because he started as this like total blank slate guy, Stout trained him on both sides. He can do left and right. And so as you are thinking what might the Eagles do if they want to draft a tackle in the first round to eventually replace Lane, I think they do have the optionality. If the guy that they draft is just a left side guy, they could eventually flip Jordan to the right side. Do you think that that's a part of their consideration?
No, I think he's their left tackle. I mean, okay. I don't think Lane's going to play at least 2 more years, at least this year, next year. He's healthy. He feels good. He's on his training program right now. Last year at this time, he was coming back from, double hernia surgery. So, he's in a good place. Saw him yesterday. But look, you can never go wrong, drafting offensive linemen. I don't care if it's at 22 or 50 or 53. There's good players in this draft. Like they lost a lot of depth this year, Bo. They lost, Suapeta. They lost Jack Driscoll. They lost Kelsey. They lost a lot of depth. And so you could draft a tackle and play him at guard. You could get value for him. You could draft a guard that could double as a center, a Graham Barton type. I've been pushing for Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State.
Interesting.
But you watch Christian Haynes out of Connecticut. I mean, there's a lot of prospects here that that could be taken with any number of those top 3 picks that they have.
So just in general, before we get to some of those potential options at 22, I have been sort of cautioning about like the difficulty of just assuming that this offensive line is going to be, a top 5 group without Jason Kelsey next year. How would you sort of explain the difficulty of what it's going to be like to have Cam Jurgens there and all of the different variables that's going to change about pre-snap stuff and everything they can do in the running game?
Well, I mean, when they drafted Cam Jurgens, they knew that Jason Kelsey was on the back end, and they didn't know when he was going to retire. I mean, he'd been hinting at it for the last 3 years. And so I think, I know he could still play, but sometimes it's good to leave the party before the lights come on. But that was the heir apparent. I mean, he was part of the process of getting Cam Jurgens drafted. He was an excellent prospect coming out of Nebraska. When he has had a chance to play center, he's been fine. Like I think it's kind of ridiculous to think he could be Jason Kelsey from all of it, from the leadership, the excellent play, tracking linebackers 30 yards down the field. I mean, I think he can do some of that stuff. But you got to allow him to kind of just grow into the position, build a relationship with the guards next to him, and then, working with Jalen on protections and fronts and recognition. So that, I think he's ready to do that. I think he's watched Kelsey and learned a great deal over the last 2 years. They just have a hole right now at right guard, and maybe that's Tyler Steen, and maybe it's not. And so the draft might determine a lot of that right now. But I think they're in good shape here, just going forward with the continuity that they have. And look, Kelsey will be missed for sure, but everybody has to move on from Hall of Fame players. You just have to move on.
So if it is indeed that they go with an offensive lineman at 22, there's this stacked tackle class. We expect that Alt and Fashanu are going to be out of the picture, but you've got Fatanu from Washington, you've got the guy from Fuaga from Oregon State, you've got Amarius Mims, you've got Tyler Guyton. Is there anybody in that group who sort of screams Jeff Stoutland guy to you?
Well, Fuaga is he's been right tackle at Oregon State.
You're wearing the colors.
Yeah, I actually was just watching him this morning. I mean, he's got anvil, like his hands are like anvils. When he hits you, he shocks you. I think he's just beginning the process. I mean, he was a fine right tackle. Um, but when you watch him, um, he's got some nastiness to him. He moves really well. There's a lot to like. Tyler Guyton, I just got done watching another game against Texas. Like honestly, some things just look so easy to him, but he needs a lot of work. Like he doesn't really know how to. I mean, he's 6'8" now. He's got to get lower. He's got to play lower. But if you just look at his natural movement, I mean, when this is all said and done, 3 years down the road, he might be the best of all of them, of everybody. I mean, including Alt and Fasciano. Like he's really talented. And I've talked to Lane about him. He's worked out with him in Oklahoma, and he's just this really elite, smooth athlete. Sometimes Bo, that does transfer to become an elite player, and sometimes you're just this really smooth athlete that doesn't get a lot better. I mean, it's really up to him and to the coaching. But there's no question in my mind he can play left tackle, he can play right tackle, because he's really good. And Marius is just a freak, like size. He's just played very little football. You can talk about the starts. It's limited 8 starts, but he played a lot of football. They just rotate players at Georgia, and so he was part of these rotations. But just from a size standpoint, um, he looks the part. I mean, you go through the airport and you're like, oh man, this is a nasty and scary looking team.
So if we take a step back and talk a little bit about some of the things the Eagles did in free agency, you talked about, if they had leaned on the running game down the stretch, things might have been different. Well, they go out and spend a lot of money to bring in Saquon Barkley. What did you make of it all?
Well, I mean, I thought the Giants, screwed things up last year, Bo. Like I didn't understand how they extended Daniel and put Saquon on the franchise.
Yes, they made the wrong choice there.
They made the wrong choice there. Like they could cover it up any way they want. They made the wrong choice, and now they're stuck. So I would think that Saquon, just against the Giants, might be in the Pro Bowl this coming season. Just seeing him twice, like I think he's just going to see like red, and just rip
like you thought Boston Scott was bad. Giants fans, wait till you see Saquon.
Right. Yeah. No, so I mean, when that schedule comes out next month, I mean, those games will be circled by Saquon right away. Like Saquon is an interesting back because he's not a guy that makes people miss. And he's not a guy that just has this, contact balance and runs people over. He doesn't. But if you give him a runway, like he'd go a long ways, and he could you give him a crease the way I think this will be the best offensive line he's ever played behind. I mean, you give him a crease now. I mean, and a steady crease where it's not just this traffic jam on the Garden State Parkway, like it was to the Giants many of the last couple of years. Like he could go a long ways. And you can move him around. He's a very good receiver. Adjusted the ball really well in the air. He can run a lot of different type of routes. He can run the wheels and everything. So, like, there's a lot of really multiple ways that you can use Saquon. But I expect that this whole running back by committee thing is over. He's your starting running back. Maybe Gainwell's the backup, whatever. But like he's going to get 300 touches, and I think he's going to put up 1,800 yards. I expect that from Saquon this year.
I think I'm with you.
That's just rushing.
Yeah, sure. Other side of the ball, you're also, in addition to the Eagles, you're very close to that Jets team. And so this like trade by proxy that the Eagles have made of letting Hassan Reddick go, bringing in Bryce Huff, what is that going to do for the defense? What kind of player are they getting?
Well, I mean, look, Bryce Huff, the difference is Hassan is a full-time player. Like he plays 75% of the snaps. Bryce has never done it. He's been a rotational player. Hey, it's 3rd and 12, Bryce Huff time. And so I like Bryce Huff. I nicknamed him the Bugatti. He's an expensive Italian sports car.
I like that.
And, you take it out for a drive, and you feel different. And so he comes.
You need to explain it to me because I have never driven a Bugatti.
I haven't either, but
Okay.
I understand that this is a special type of drive. Like he's bigger than Hassan, and I've always said, just studying him in New York, especially the last 2 years, that he should get more playing time. But they had a lot of depth at that position, so he rotated. So maybe he plays himself into more snaps instead of 48% of the snaps. Maybe he plays 60%, and if he does, or 65%, if he does, let's see how he holds up because he's never had to do that before. And let's just see how he plays against the run if he's out on the field on first downs, which he wasn't in New York. But so from that standpoint, like Hassan is a better player because Hassan can affect the game in a lot of different ways. We got to see that about Bryce. I think the Jets got the better of the deal, but Bryce is younger. He's coming off his best season. Let's put him in there next to Jalen Carter and see, what he becomes. And if they decide to start him, or if they continue playing him in a rotational role. But if you shell out 51, million shekels,
Yeah.
you think that he's going to be more than a part-time player.
Yeah, and so do you think that really was just the circumstance of how deep the Jets were, or do you think there are real concerns about him as a run defender?
I think it's both. I mean, Jermaine Johnson really grew into his role. Second year as the number 1 draft pick. They had signed Carl Lawson to a big number. They had Jonathan Franklin Myers who could play on the edge. So they had guys that could play out there. And they were a team built around their defensive front, much like the Eagles, the 49ers, a few other teams in this league, where they put a lot of resources into the defensive line. And so they were 8 or 9 deep. There were some Sundays last year the Jets dressed 9 defensive linemen, and they just had this rotation. So that he had his role within that rotation, and they were really, really good. They just realized by December that you can't win games if you don't score any points. They didn't score any points, so the defense kind of fell apart at the end of the season.
What about bringing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back? We've heard so much about the attitude he brings. What about just what he brings on the field?
Well, I mean, he's Jonathan Gannon really used him in a great way. Like, he took over for Malcolm Jenkins here, and he was great in that Malcolm Jenkins role. He was really nasty down the box. He's a very good tackler. He's got a lot of savviness, down the box. But he also, reads routes and the quarterbacks really well. And that's how he came up with the 6 interceptions. He got injured last year in Detroit. Wasn't much of a factor. But I think I never really understood even last year how you decided to part ways with Chauncey but keep Bradbury. To me, they didn't get it right last year. And Chauncey should have been the guy they kept, and they should have moved on. But they did it the other way, and now he's back. So I think they recognize the mistake that they made last year.
Anything else in terms of at 22 guys who may be on your radar as we are all trying to cram for this exam that is approaching?
Well, I mean, I know that there's some elite defensive line prospects in this draft. Dallas Turner's an elite player. Jared Verse is an elite player. Edrin Cooper. If you just watch his Alabama game, you go, he's Hassan Reddick. That's how he moves, maybe even quicker. There's some elite defensive tackles. I mean, Johnny Newton is an elite player. Now, you could say you're set with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Tui Pelotu, but be honest with you, and Milton Williams. But Jordan Davis hadn't showed me a lot so far. I don't know who he showed anything to so far. I know how big he is, and they'll talk about his weight, when we get to mini camp and all this. He's been a non-factor. And so at some point you go, what is Jordan Davis? And if he isn't what you need in this league, which is somebody that can really affect a quarterback, Johnny Newton at 22, I'm not saying it's a mistake with Jordan Davis because I'm not ready to do that. I want to see him with a different defensive line coach and, a different coordinator right now. But, Johnny Newton is an excellent football player. So there's 22. There's offensive lineman Graham Barton at Duke. He's a guy that can play any position. You might plug and play him at right guard, and you're going to get a really smart, talented player.
We talked a little bit about Byron Murphy yesterday too from Texas. If you're looking at defensive tackles, you like him as well?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I like Newton better than Murphy, but depending on who you talk to, it's 1-2. But he's, and Devondre Sweat was there, but he reminds me of Jordan Davis.
Right.
He's got massive size, but I'm not sure about this pass rush ability. But Murphy gives you good pass rush, gives you a good pop in the middle. I don't think he's Jalen Carter talented, but he's a talented player, and he's a first round pick. He's a first round talent, and so it's just a question of where you're comfortable taking him. I expect honestly Howie to move in this draft, whether it's up or down, because it's just who he is, and they can do that if they want to go after a star player or acquire more picks. I think I can see them going up, and I can see them going down in this draft. I actually can't even see him staying at 22. I feel like go after one of the elite prospects up front, and that might be Fuaga, and just say he's our right guard, and down the road maybe he takes over for Lane if that happens. Going up to get a guy like that, or drop him back and acquiring just more depth and more picks along the front, and hopefully finding themselves a corner for the future.
Yeah, I think that's right. The only thing that is making me think that they could stay at 22 is if they just want to tackle, and there's all of those guys. One of them is going to be there. That's the one position where I think if they're going to stick and pick, that's where it makes sense. Otherwise, I think you're right. Howie's proclivity is definitely to move up or down around the board. Last one. You think we're going to see Lane at WrestleMania this weekend?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, he'll be over there. Yeah, Kelsey will be over there. It'll draw a big crowd. I mean, it's a big event. And
yeah.
So big events just draw guys in the guys in the trenches. They want to go be a part of it. Splash around. Go watch guys fly off the turnbuckle and go, could this be my second career? So I expect Lane. I saw him yesterday. I know he's in town, so I expect him to be over there at this weekend.
Who was were you a wrestling guy growing up? Did you have a guy who was yours? I was a Bret Hart guy growing up.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I played in Dallas, like the Von Erichs used to work out at the gym I went to.
Oh.
They had a lot of pro wrestlers back then. So I kind of go back to Hulk and, Hulkamania and all that kind of stuff back then. But I've always been attracted to it. Knowing just the level of athlete it takes, even if you want to say it's fake, whatever they want to say, it takes great athletes to do a lot of the things that they do. So I always had a deep respect. And, and honestly, in this digital footprint world that we live in, nothing comes close to wrestling when it comes to just wrestling. I mean, soccer, MMA, football, nothing comes close to the attention that wrestlers get on social media.
Except for Brian Baldinger, because your numbers are Baffa. We know that, Baldy.
Well,
thank you so much.
What they want right here, Bo. That's all.
Thank you for taking the time. I look forward to talking again soon, Baldy, and that'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Back on Monday, we're going to have, I believe, Fran Duffy joining us in studio, so that'll be fun. Oh. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening. We'll talk to you later, and as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.